Greetings, this is Charles Kelly, interviewing First Lieutenant Lawrence Larry Schell, Schell, at his home on 4 Laurel Avenue in Fort Wright, Kentucky, on October 27th, 2010. So, Mr. Schell, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview for the Library of Congress. Let me first ask you your name, please.
Larry Schell, Schell, Lawrence D.
And where were you born and your birthday?
Goodland, Kansas, April 23rd, 1918.
So, Mr. Schell, tell us first, before the war, about your family, what your father did, where exactly you grew up, what you did, your activities before the war, what your family was like.
Well, my father was I grew up in western Kansas. He was in the cattle business. He was a cattle broker. He would buy cattle from the local ranchmen and ship them to a market, either Kansas City or Denver or Chicago. And he died in 1930. And then we moved in with my maternal grandparents and in Goodland and stayed there and through high school. Graduated high school in 1936, and then I had worked for the J.C. Penney Company in the local store there. And after I graduated from high school, I went to Denver, worked in the Denver store, and went to Denver University. And I was there from 36 to 42, and I went in the Army from 42 to 46.
Okay, what were your parents' names?
Harry and Ellen.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family? Do you have any siblings?
I have a sister who 4 years younger, and she's still living, and she lives in Albuquerque.
Can you tell us briefly, Larry, any recollections about the Depression, what that was like, what your family did? It must have been hard having your father die when you were so young at the beginning of the Depression there.
Well, of course, I remember the Depression very well. About 80% of the county was unemployed. My grandfather, who we lived with after my father died, was a railroader, so he wasn't affected as much as the farmers were. I was there in the center of the Dust Bowl area, and I can remember that very well. And in high school particularly, a big dust storm would be on the way, and they'd let school out so everybody could get home before the storm hit. But it was pretty tough. But as I say, we fared better than most because of my grandfathers had a railroad pension, and
What did your father die of so young?
It was a heart attack.
Okay, Mr. Schell, so in 1942 you were in Denver, and you attended Denver University?
Right.
And what were you majoring in there?
Business administration.
So, did you graduate from there
No.
and then enlist in the Army?
No. I went 4 years off and on while I was working, but I never graduated, and then the war came along, and I went in the Army in 42, came back in 46, and got married in 46, and went back to work for the J.C. Penney Company, and in 48 I was transferred to Cincinnati.
Gotcha,
we
I
opened
understand.
a new store in Cincinnati, and I was transferred here. I was in Cincinnati 3 years, and then I was transferred to Columbus as the assistant manager in the Columbus store. And then in '54, I opened a new store in Middletown. I was in Middletown 7 years. Well, back up, my first child, Dave, was born in Denver. My second child, Lisa, was born in Cincinnati. And my third child, Patty, was born in Middletown. Then we had a chance to come back to this area. The Covington store was a real good store and a very profitable store, and so we came back here, and we liked the area. It was a Catholic community, and that appealed to us, and had no idea we would stay, but we did, and I finally retired in '78, and then I went in the real estate business for 15 years, and finally retired in '93.
Excellent. So, jump back to 1942. What made you want to enlist?
Well, after Pearl Harbor. Well, before Pearl Harbor, everybody of Army age or military age had a draft number, and everybody trying to figure out some way to avoid the draft. But after Pearl Harbor, then the whole attitude changed, and everybody we knew we'd have to go, so we were anxious to go, and that's...
Okay. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor? And what was that like?
Well, it was a Sunday in Denver. It was real nice. It was in December, of course, December 7th. But it was such a nice day. I was playing golf. Got back. I was living in a boarding house, and I got back to the boarding house, and everybody was all excited about the fact that the chaps had bombed Pearl Harbor, and everything changed after that.
What did your family think about you enlisting?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they weren't there. Well, everybody knew that sooner or later that it'd be going in anyway.
And how about Virginia? You had your...
I didn't even know her then.
Okay. So tell me, where did you enlist? You went to downtown Denver to do that?
Well, I was in Denver, downtown Denver. I guess they had a recruitment office there. I don't remember exactly where it was, but...
So then what happened after you enlisted?
Well, Fort Logan, Colorado, is right there in Denver. So I got a reporting date, and I reported, and got shipped to Santa Barbara, California. And at that time, they were federalizing the California National Guard, which was the 40th Division, and they were bringing that up to strength, so that's why I got assigned to the 40th Division.
So in Santa Barbara, is that what's known as boot camp, or?
Yeah, it was just a temporary camp. There were dozens of them then.
How long were you there?
Most of the 13 weeks, I guess.
13 weeks for boot camp?
Well, more or less. It wasn't quite as formal as it is today. We were part of the California, or the Western Defense Command. Of course, things were sort of in a state of flux there in California, because somebody saw a Japanese sub every night,
Did they really?
Not really, but they thought they did. So we ran motor patrols up mostly in the San Francisco area for most of that time.
What were motor patrols?
Well, we had a machine gun mounted on a weapons carrier, and we just drove up and down the coast, particularly in the what was it? Where they, well, I don't remember the companies, but they're manufacturing mostly ships, troop ships, and so forth there.
Did people think that the Japanese were going to attack the coast?
Oh yeah, people thought that. That's where they, that's when they interned most of the Japanese and so forth.
Did you see any internment camps?
Oh yeah.
What were those like?
Oh, they were good. The main one that I was closest to was at Santa Anita in Pasadena. It was just a great big area with chain link fence around it. It was, the living conditions were good and so forth. As a matter of fact, later on in the war, after I became commissioned, and they set up an ordnance school in Santa Anita, and we lived in some of the buildings that the Japanese had lived in. They were good. I mean, temporary tar paper, buildings, but you don't need much insulation in California.
True. So in this boot camp, what were your daily activities? What would you do?
Get up and march and drill and hike and then had some weapons instruction and so.
What was the chow like?
It was good. Yeah, I have no complaint with most of the Army chow, not all of it, but it was all right.
What were the accommodations like? Was everyone just crammed in
Mostly tents.
Oh, you're in tents. Okay, so there you learned how to be a soldier,
Right.
basically.
Right.
After boot camp, where'd you go?
Well, I stayed on the West Coast. To say, we were part of the Western Defense Command,
okay.
And clear up until till the following February when I got my assignment to Ordinance OCS.
Yeah, how did you get your assignment to OCS?
Well, I was stationed at the Presidio in San Francisco, and they put out a bulletin. They were looking for officer candidates for Ordnance. So I applied and took the test and passed, and eventually got my assignment.
Oh, good. So, okay, then you had to go to officers candidate school, didn't you?
Right.
And where was that?
That was in Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland.
That was, you went over in February of 43, something like that?
43, yeah.
Went over by train, across the country?
Oh, yeah.
What was the mood of the nation like then? Was everyone excited? Did you see soldiers everywhere?
Yeah, well, it was just a matter of everyday life. I mean, it was just what everybody expected. Everybody was either in the service or working in some sort of a service-connected industry.
It's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Then you went to Aberdeen, Maryland.
Right.
And what was that like? What happened there exactly?
Well, there was 13 weeks. We had 9 weeks of military, learning how to be an officer, and then you got assigned to a specialty. Mine was artillery, and then you had 4 weeks of specialized training, learning how to repair artillery weapons.
Well, how did you get assigned that? Did you request that, or did you have a knowledge of that?
No, they just assigned you.
Do you learn how to shoot the guns too, and all that stuff there?
Oh yeah.
Wow. What was that like? Where would you practice?
Well, they had firing ranges.
And what were some of the guns that you would use and fire with?
Well, about that time, the emphasis was from field artillery to anti-aircraft artillery, and then I went. Well, my first assignment I was at the Red River Ordinance Depot in Texarkana, Texas, and I was there as an artillery repair officer until maybe September, and then I was assigned to went back to AntiAircraft Artillery School in Santa Anita, California, and I was there for about 8 weeks, I guess. And then I was assigned to activate a anti-aircraft maintenance company. Then we went down to Texas, and we got a bunch of draftees, and then took them to the training, and was in Texas for several months, and then they shipped us to Georgia, Camp Stewart, Georgia, and we finished training, and then we got our overseas assignment.
When would that have been? You were finished in Georgia, and that would have been 1944, probably.
Yeah.
As an officer in charge of anti-aircraft maintenance, what were your daily assignments, and how many men were you in charge of, and those type of things?
Well, the company, the 369th Ordnance Maintenance Company, we had an artillery section, fire control, small arms, and I was in charge of the artillery maintenance, and I guess had about 50 men.
Wow. Did you yourself know how to repair stuff, or would you?
Well, I did then.
What were the names of some of the weapons that? Now this was anti-aircraft, wasn't it?
Yes.
Were they like? What was their?
Well, there
20
were
millimeter.
90 millimeters were the big ones, and twin 40s, and those are the two main ones, and then 50 caliber and 20 millimeter. They are different.
Would you practice on plane? Would someone be flying a plane and you practice shooting at it?
We didn't do the firing. We were if they had a malfunction or something went wrong, then we'd go out and usually just repair them on the spot, or else they'd bring them in to.
How often would they break down? Are they pretty reliable, or did it happen a lot?
No, it didn't happen a lot.
So you graduated OCS as a second lieutenant.
Right.
Then you went around the country, and you ended up in Georgia, and you got your overseas assignment. Then what happened?
Well, we went overseas. We landed at Le Havre, France.
Tell me about the ship, the boat ride over there. What was that like?
Well, it was pretty rough, really. It was in the winter of '44, and the ship wasn't very big, and it bounced around a lot. Everybody got sick, and we were in a convoy. And
do you remember the name of the ship?
No.
So you're in a convoy. How long does it take you to get over there?
Oh, I guess probably about 2 weeks. We didn't go very fast or very far, and they did a lot of back and forth to avoid submarine attack and so forth.
And what month? This was in 1944.
Yeah.
So this was after D-Day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so November, December, something, 44.
Right.
All right. And what were accommodations like on the ship? Do you ever sleep in a hammock?
No, we had bunks. They were pretty crowded, but
sure.
Yeah.
Did you get seasick?
Oh, yeah. Everybody got seasick.
Were you fired on or anything in that convoy?
Yeah, we had depth charge attack, or submarine alert and depth charges, and the ship, you'd think the walls were going to come in. Look at those rivets and hope they'd hold.
You mean when you launched the depth charge?
Yeah.
You launched depth charge and they'd explode underneath you?
Right.
Oh, really? And so the concussion?
Yeah, right.
I didn't realize that. What'd you do on the ship all day?
Played pinochle.
You got pretty good at that?
Well, everybody else did too.
Okay, so then you landed at Le Havre in France.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happened?
Well, then we had to get our equipment ready. We shipped everything over in Cosmoline.
What's Cosmoline?
Well, it's a preparation to keep metal from rusting. So we had to get and then we had to we took our special purpose vehicles, the ones that were set up with the machinery that we needed to make the repairs, but we picked up our general purpose vehicles over there, our jeeps and weapons carriers and 6x6s, and then we got those all together, and then we got the outfit back to operating, and then we got our first assignment, was in France. We'd go and set up shop, and they'd send out the word if you needed work, take it to such and such a place, and so forth. And we were in France, and then as the war progressed, we moved to Landau, Germany, and we were there for maybe a week, 10 days, and then we went to Mannheim, Germany. We crossed the Rhine at Mannheim, and we were lucky to find a spot there. We occupied a brewery, which had some special side effects. We had half a million liters of beer. But anyway, the main thing was they had the machine shop all set up to do their maintenance, and so we took that over. And normally we'd set our shop up out in the field someplace, but this was much more efficient, and we could turn out a lot more work at Mannheim. And saying as the war progressed and the front moved on east, there was still activity. Most of the German planes would come over the Rhine River at night and bomb the bridges, and so we stayed in Mannheim clear to the end of the war until the 8th of May. And then we got assigned after we were a few weeks after the war was over. I don't remember exactly how long, but we got orders to go to the Pacific, and so we went back to France and packed up again, getting ready to go to the Pacific, and we were to go to Marseille on the 15th of August, and they dropped the first bomb, and the 9th of August, and then they dropped the second bomb in Hiroshima, and then the Japanese surrendered on the 12th. So when we were still in France. Well, we were in close to Reims, but then we went down to Marseille. That's where we were supposed to ship out from to go to the Pacific. We get down to Marseille, and of course everything was really in a state of flux. When the European War was over, everybody knew pretty well, things were winding down, and knew it was a matter of days. But the Japanese thing, everybody expected the Japanese War, the Pacific War, to last another year or several years or something. So they dropped the bomb, and the Japs surrendered, and the war was over. We got down to Marseille, and the port commander called us in, and he didn't know. He couldn't get any orders about who to. Each ship that came into the harbor was designated to take a certain outfit to a certain place. We were supposed to go to Manila, and we were supposed to go direct to Manila, not through the States. As soon as the European War was over, then most all the outfits had assignments to go to the Pacific. Some direct, most of them indirect. That is, they'd go to the States first and then go to the Pacific. We were the ones that were going to go direct, and we weren't even going to go through the States. But the port commander called us in and said, "I'm sure that they're not going to want you to go. You're not going to have to go direct now. So I'm going to, when your ship comes in, I'm going to send you to the States." And that's what happened. And so we got back. Several weeks earlier than we normally would. And we got back to the States, and everybody had a 45 days convalescent leave, and then we got a 15-day extension, so we actually had a 60-day leave. And then when we reported back to Fort Bliss in November, by that time they had lowered the points to the point that we didn't have any enlisted men. The points just applied to enlisted men at that time. And you got points for service, months in the service. I think they got double points for time overseas, and then we got 5 points for each of the Bronze Stars that we got. So by the time we got back to Fort Bliss in November, we didn't have a company. So they disbanded the company, and then from November to January, you had an MOS number, Military Occupational Specialty, and mine was Artillery Repair Officer, and as long as that was a critical classification, they wouldn't let you out. But as soon as it got to the point where your classification was not essential, then you could get out, and that's what happened. I got out in January of 46, and actually my official date was March, because I had a couple of months accumulated leave that I had never had an opportunity to use. So anyway, I got out in January, and meanwhile I had met Virginia in Denver when I was through there a couple of times, and she worked at the store. So and then when I saw her after I got back from overseas, and we got engaged, and we were going to get married when I got out, and so I knew I was going to get out. I called her and told her to publish the van, so I'm getting out tomorrow, and in 2 weeks we got married.
Wow. Neat. In Denver there?
In Denver, yeah.
Wow. That's a neat story. What was your mood when you got out of the Army? Were you
Well, I had worked for the J.C. Penney Company for quite a few years. I had a job and was anxious to get back to my career.
Sure. So go back into France. So basically, you would set up operations, and damaged equipment, anti-aircraft equipment,
Yeah.
would come in to your station,
Yes.
and you would oversee the repair of that. Was a lot of equipment coming in, or what would you?
No, not really. Well, we did vehicle repair as well as artillery repair. And most of the work we did was on the Rhine River. We had AA batteries set up, and they would malfunction. They'd call us, either bring it in, or most of the time on the big stuff, we'd have to go out there and repair it. Most of the time it was firing mechanism, things like that we'd just replace.
Okay. You said there were raids. German planes would raid at night. Do you remember those? What were those raids like?
Oh, it didn't amount to much. Just a few. Well, after a while, before there was quite a bit of artillery. We were under artillery fire several times, but as the war progressed and the front moved farther east, why they'd come over just harassment mostly. I mean, they'd come over and drop a bomb or something, but enough activity that we had to stay there.
Did you ever see planes shot at or shot down?
No.
But you heard the firefights, anti-aircraft fire.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Now, what was it? You said you were shot at by artillery. Was that in France?
No, that was Germany.
Any shells ever come close to your?
Well, I don't know what close is. We were under fire, but
what range? How far do you think they were firing on you from?
oh, I don't know.
Do you ever think you might die?
Oh, sure.
What was that like? Was that scary?
Well, you didn't have any choice, but it was on your mind. Certainly.
What were the French people like when you got in France?
They were delightful.
Were they?
Very nice. Of course, they had a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah.
But no, I liked the French.
Did they come? Did you have many dealings with French citizens? Would they come?
Not much. We got after the war, and we got moved back into France, and we're packing up. I had several leaves in Paris, and got to see most all the sights, the Louvre and Sacré-Cœur, and got to know Paris pretty well.
What was the mood like in Paris after the war?
Well, everybody was relieved, I guess. There were still a lot of shortages. I mean, the French people, we weren't allowed, we were there on leave, we weren't allowed to eat any food, French food, because they had, they needed all their food.
Wow.
They had hotels set up for the American troops, and we would stay in the hotels and eat GI food.
K-rations?
Oh, no, not K-rations, just regular mess.
Regular mess?
Yeah, but not, the French had, a lot of food shortages then and for a long time after that.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever see any prisoners of war or anything?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
How did you encounter them?
Well, as we moved, they would send them back, and we put a lot of them to work. We had a bunch of them working for us, doing the KP and cleanup duty and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Very good. When you moved into Germany, what were the German people like? What was the mood there?
We had practically no contact with the German civilians. In fact, we weren't even supposed to talk to them. I mean, they had the army set up administrators in the cities, and to keep order, particularly because when the Germans retreated, and most of the city officials also retreated. So here was a city left without any law enforcement. So the army had to set up military law enforcement to administer the cities. Most people don't even think about that, but and then they formed they formed city administration companies that would move into the cities and try to run the cities until the war was over.
Were there a lot of bombed out cities that you saw?
Oh yeah. Mannheim was practically flat, and most of the Landau also, where I got quite a few of those things there. I mean, there were nobody there at all. I mean.
You showed me some really interesting souvenirs that you picked up in Europe. The bayonet and a copy of Mein Kampf autographed by Hitler himself, which is amazing. What were the circumstances of that? Where did you get those exactly?
I don't even remember. But I think I got the Mein Kampf. I think I got that in Landau, in a bombed-out building.
You just would be walking around and...
Yeah. I mean, it would just open and stuff that just there. I have the bayonet. I don't remember where I got that.
Were you afraid of snipers or booby traps or anything like that?
Well, we'd have. Even in Mannheim, we had reports of activity in various places. To check them out.
And then tell me, you stayed at the brewmeister's house. Was it your whole company stayed there?
No. The officers stayed in one building, and they all stayed in surrounding buildings, the whole company, within a block or two.
And it was the big brewery complex?
Oh yeah.
So what was that like? Any good memories or adventures?
Oh, sure. We had all the beer we wanted every night, and then having beer, you could trade for almost anything you wanted. We would trade other outfits that came across champagne. We'd trade them beer for champagne, and there was a quartermaster bakery unit in the area, and we'd give them a couple of kegs of beer for fresh baked cinnamon rolls every morning, and you had beer, you could get most anything you want.
Was the beer good?
Oh yeah.
Or was it kept in just big kegs?
Well, it was underground, so it was cool. It wasn't refrigerated or anything, but it was good.
And what were the living arrangements like at that brewmeister's house?
Well, it was a pretty big house. We had mostly the second floor. There were several bedrooms, and then we had cots and a living room and so forth. It was very, very nice.
And you said in your subsequent travels to Europe, you had gone back and visited that place.
Yeah.
It was still there?
Oh yeah. In fact, it's the Eichbaum Brewery, and it's still there and big. It's bigger. It's expanded. The buildings that I remember that were there when we were there are still there, but they've built a lot more buildings around there. Eichbaum Brewery is still a big brewery in that part of Germany.
Did they remember you over there?
Oh no, I didn't talk to anybody. about that.
Just a few more questions. When you were carrying out your duties, repairing the anti-aircraft and the Jeeps, how many would you repair a day? Were you constantly busy?
Oh yeah, never caught up.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the average turnaround time?
For
A couple days? You'd go out in the field sometimes and repair things.
Oh yeah. Well, then you do it right on the spot. If the vehicle was damaged, well, depending on how badly it was damaged, sometime motor repair, sometime axles or wheels or so forth, and we usually would cannibalize, make one good one out of two or three damaged ones.
Sure. And sometimes the damage was actually from enemy fire.
Oh yeah. Most vehicle damage was just vehicle damage. Did
you ever see any casualties over there? In hospitals?
I never saw them actually happen. I saw them
afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that your Catholic faith is important to you. What was the practice of the faith like when you were in the Army over in Europe?
Well, we seldom got to Mass. Several places where we'd be, a chaplain would show up and say Mass. I remember in one place, someplace in Germany, it was Sunday and things were kind of quiet, and there was a little church in town, so a bunch of us went over and went to Mass, carried our weapons into Mass, put invasion currency in the collection box.
What was invasion currency?
Well, I've got some. I'll show you.
Okay.
I've got some upstairs.
So you went to the Mass there in German? The German people were there?
Oh yeah.
I wonder what they thought of that. What were the churches like in Germany and France?
Well, they were mostly we'd call old-fashioned churches, or regular. Yeah. They're nice. They're all nice.
Did you get to serve with any black people? I know you said there was some segregation.
No. Never saw any.
But you were in OCS with some black, weren't they?
Right.
Weren't you? So they became officers?
Yeah. Well, they were African American outfits, mostly ammunition companies, and mostly white officers, because there weren't that many black officers. But we had, in my OCS class, I think there were 2.
Okay.
And they would be assigned to a segregated black outfit.
Oh. How many candidates in your OCS class?
Well, I think they started out about 250. They graduated about 180.
Okay.
Well, Lieutenant Schell, we really appreciate what you've given for this country, and we admire your bravery, and you're a hero to us, and I really thank you for taking this time on this beautiful late October afternoon. Is there anything else, any other memories, anything else you want to say for posterity about the war, about where you served, who you served with? Anything else you can think of? Any stories that you would like to mention?
Oh, I don't think so. And as far as the hero part, we had no choice.
Yeah.
None of us would have been there if we didn't have to.
Yeah.
So.
Did you know anybody that died?
Oh my, yes.
Some friends and
schoolmates, and I graduated from high school in '36. I think the first draft was in '39, maybe. And my class, of course, my high school class, we were 21 when they initiated the draft. So almost everybody went in, and a lot of my classmates were killed.
Are you glad you did it? Was it a good adventure?
Well, now that it's all over and I came back, I won't say I was glad. If I'd had a choice, I wouldn't have gone.
But you did it, and we're thankful. So God bless you, and carry on, soldier.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me show you this invasion currency. It's kind of